Brought to you by fine listeners just like yourselves. Just go on over to our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/baseball talk. And you can subscribe to this podcast and help sponsor it. Here's this edition of the Baseball Talk Radio Show. And hello, everyone, and welcome to the after trade deadline edition of the Baseball Talk Radio Show, where we're talking all about the biggest trades that happened yesterday on the 31st of July, 2017. Hello, Mr. Gary Mack.
Hello, Mr. Baxter. How are you this fine day?
Not bad. I'm overviewing the lake as I'm doing the podcast here, and hadn't done that in quite a time now. And it's getting to be almost near sunset here. Very beautiful afternoon and nice summer day here, and just thinking about the trade deadline and how lucky we are to have gone through that.
Yes, and both of our teams made minor moves, but maybe some moves that could be counted towards their future.
Yes, indeed. A lot of the big names changing teams. And, I had a flashback on this trade deadline, Gary. I usually think about the superstars involved in it, but I had to go back to my youth to where I was collecting baseball cards. Couldn't you wait to get the traded baseball cards?
Yeah. But you got to remember that in those days, too, it was like a month and a half earlier, the trading deadline. So I guess they could get those out in time. But yeah, and then they'd had the funky picture of the new hat on there or something, because they, now they do it within instance with Photoshop. You put on ESPN or MLB, and they've got the guy in the new uniform, and it looks perfect. And in those days, they did it by hand, I guess, on negatives and everything else. It always looked kind of funky, but yeah, you're right. The old traded sets of cards, and lot of trades this year, Rich, and but they were talking about this yesterday, and it was very little position players. It was a lot of pitchers changing hands.
Yeah, a lot of pitching, and of course, the Dodgers needed a pitcher. They had their best go down on them with a back injury, may be ready for the playoffs, but they couldn't take that risk. They added a big piece of the puzzle. The Yankees added a big piece of the puzzle to their pitching. And it was, basically those top tier teams again with a lot to go for this season, making the big moves. So we'll have to see which one made the smartest move. And as I overheard on some MLB network radio talks a few times during the week, this was the market for pitchers. That was what was in need at the particular time, and those guys are going to benefit from it.
Yeah, and it was crazy. I mean, tons of pitches. The Yankees got Sonny Gray as well as David Robertson, and a couple other young guys that they really wanted in that one trade with Chicago. And Todd Frazier, they got, of course, Sonny Gray, they got from Oakland. Really put themselves in a very good position. Now, Boston got Addison Reed from the Mets, so they got a relief pitcher that they needed, and that's about all they did. Let's see who else got pitching. You mentioned the Dodgers. They got one of the big prizes in Yu Darvish from Texas, as well as Tony Watson from the Pittsburgh Pirates, a left-handed pitcher. And they also, I believe, got somebody from Cincinnati, another left-hand pitcher, Tony Cingrani. So they were busy, the Dodgers, and got some things done that they needed to do. And like you said, the rich get richer, and Rich, they were talking about this as well yesterday, how it's changed where now the in a case of like the Dodgers and Houston, who, by the way, added Francisco Liriano to their pitching staff. Guys used to set themselves up for the second half run, but a team like the Dodgers has such a big lead. They're really trying to set themselves up for the postseason, and it's a whole different attitude now than it was in the past.
Oh yeah, they went after Darvish, and it was, not certain that they were going to get him. I remember a friend asking me at work, did I hear of any big trades? And this was in the early afternoon, around 12 noon or so. And I looked down at my phone, and I usually get the pushes from MLB on the big news that appear on my phone, and I didn't have many at that time. But I looked down again around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I had about 20 uh, lined up to read. So it was almost like a flood of trades happening all about that deadline time. And, nothing was for sure. So they made these last minute deals out. I believe the Dodger deal was done around 20 minutes to 4, right? Almost when the trade deadline was going to come to expire. But yeah, Yu Darvish sort of fits in with the Dodgers. He's a Japanese pitcher, and the Dodgers used to have a few good Japanese pitchers. Hideo Nomo a few years ago. I was always a big fan of his, and I wouldn't be surprised rather to see if Darvish
More doing chores for mom, Pearl?
The as I have to close this page out, it started playing. But I wouldn't be surprised if Darvish stayed with the Dodgers for the rest of his career now, because he may have found a home there.
Yeah, he's a free agent, and we'll have to see what he does at the end of the season, whether the Dodgers want to pay him. But yeah, that was a last minute deal. In fact, I think they announced it technically after the deadline, but they were working on the deal, so they're allowed to. But it was either done right at the 11th hour. There, they made that deal, and it doesn't really seem like they gave up a lot. Don't have it in front of me right now, but a lot of prospects and stuff. So now how good they are, I don't know, but Texas did some wheeling and dealing. They also got rid of their catcher. Jonathan Lucroy went to the Colorado Rockies, so he will be making his debut as a Rocky tonight, of course, against the Mets. Everybody seems to make their new debut with the new team against the Mets. It's Yu Darvish is scheduled to pitch Friday against the Mets, and we can't catch a break here.
Well, you'll be getting to see the first glimpse of him, I'm sure, being a Mets fan there. So that'll be good anyway, and you have a chance to stand up and throw a roadblock in on that trade. Maybe the Mets can come out and bring some big bats and make their own headlines.
Well, there you go. That's a good point, and we're excited because tonight we're going to see the major league debut of Ahmed Rosario, who is the number 2 prospect in baseball. I believe Yohan Mercado with the White Sox is the number 1 prospect, and of course he's playing with them now. He's up, and now Ahmed Rosario is up with the Mets, and he'll be playing in tonight's lineup as they go in Colorado. So that's an exciting thing. We're going to see a lot of prospects now. Atlanta has called up 2 of their top prospects. And I think Detroit has called up some top prospects because they traded away a catcher and a relief pitcher, Justin Wilson and Alex Avila. So it's an interesting time now. And of course, you want to, if you can, and let's face it, you have to admit to yourself almost that you're out of the race. And if you're out of the race, now is the time to bring up these prospects, because if you wait until September, then they're playing against, watered down lineups and things like that, expanded rosters. This way, they're still going to play against teams that are fighting for playoff spots. So they're going to get the best of talent, and they're really going to get better experience at that point in time. So I always said that, you can't buy the experience. When the Mets went to the World Series, yes, they lost, but that young pitching staff, got that pressure of going through a pennant race and going through the playoffs and going through the World Series and losing. Now, unfortunately, they've been injured for they haven't been able to stay healthy and pitch together, but it's just the idea, the experience that they gained is valuable. And anytime you can call up a guy early like that and he can go through this a pennant race or that sort of thing, it's very valuable to the team.
The last World Series winners had a different approach at the trade deadline. The Cubs considered actually becoming sellers before the trade deadline. Hadn't they straightened out as they have in the past week or two? They've suddenly regained the lead there in the NL Central from the Brewers, and they didn't really become big buyers, but they didn't sell either. There was a report out this afternoon saying that GM there, Theo Epstein, had said that he would have gladly got rid of some Cubs players had they been still 5 or 6, 7 games out of first place. So interesting times there for the Cubs as well. They've sort of righted the ship so far, and they've gotten back into this race pretty well.
Yeah, they certainly have, Rich, and it's just a funny race out there with Milwaukee holding on so long and struggling right before this deadline now, and you wonder if they've run out of gas at this point in time or not. But I hope they hang in there. It'll be fun and exciting, and they made some moves. They brought in another pitcher, so we'll see how it pans out. And right now, they're 2.5 games behind the Cubbies, so the Cubbies have
Yankees and Dodgers
got a little bit of a lead now.
Yes, indeed. Well, we'll have to see how everything shakes out. The Nationals added a little bit, and all the big marquee name teams, so to speak, made improvements towards this stretch run. And I don't remember a time where just about basically every team that was contending got a little piece of the pie that they needed. So it sort of went to each team rather well this year, I thought, Gary, the way they each picked up little bits and pieces of the team that they needed, pitchers here, some maybe a catching in the case of the Rockies there, but everybody got a little bit of something that they needed for the stretch run.
Yeah, that's a great point, Rich. I didn't even think of that. You're 100% correct, though. The Yankees picked up some guys. The Red Sox picked up some guys. Cleveland picked up somebody. Houston picked up another pitcher. Yeah, they all kind of did manage to get to try to fortify in some way. Now, not all probably completed what they wanted to complete, but interesting. They were able to do some of it.
Yes, indeed. And that wasn't all the big news of this past week since we've been off from the last show, Gary. We've had some Hall of Fame activity as well.
Well, we did. We had the Hall of Fame induction this year, and Jeff Bagwell and my mind's going black. Tim Raines and the other guy, Ivan Rodriguez. They all were inducted on Sunday into the Baseball Hall of Fame, and Rich, we were talking a little bit before the show, and I said the speeches were they were heartfelt, and but none of these guys were really great public speakers, and of course that's not part of it, but you usually get an entertaining speech of some sort. And I have to say they were a little on the dull side this year. But it's not an easy thing to do, and there's a lot of people there. And I'm not sure whether it was one of the biggest crowds. There was a lot of empty seats this year, and they had a very nice day. It was 70 degrees. It wasn't overly hot. So don't know if the enthusiasm was there this year as it has been in some other years, but it is what it is, and it was a great day, and I'm sure these guys were very excited, and There was, Bud Selig was there too as well. He was inducted, and John Sherholtz was inducted. And the day before, the award winners were given out. So it was a very, as usual, a very nice weekend. They had very good weather, which is always a concern. You don't get a shower or something when it's all outdoors. So, very nice ceremonies, and they always do a great job there. They just the whole thing is a class act, and the town is wonderful. And as I said, I was there in April. We went off season, and it's just a great time, and I urge everybody to go there.
Very nice. And yeah, like you said, some of these players were not big marquee names over the years. They were great baseball players. A guy named Jeff Bagwell for the Astros. He sort of reminds me of Ryan Sandberg. He went through his career as a tough, hard-nosed player. You didn't immediately recognize him as a potential Hall of Famer right away. Pudge Rodriguez stayed in the game for more than 20 years, I believe.
Mm.
Longevity helped him. Still, he wasn't one of those household names. Everybody knew who he was, but he wasn't like a superstar like a Ken Griffey Jr. or uh, players like that. And Tim Raines the same way. He's a journeyman, played with Montreal for a number of years, things like that. And these guys just didn't carry those fans with them that the big cities produce generally, like New York, Philadelphia, LA, for the most part. A lot of those fans will travel for something like this. What a memorable occasion. But yeah, I'm glad it was a great time. And I seem to remember going to the ballpark on a Sunday on Hall of Fame Day, and they usually honor your ticket for that day. I don't know if they still do. But if you go to a ball game on Hall of Fame Day, you generally get free admission with your ticket from that game. So if you went to last Sunday's game, um, you may be getting into the Hall of Fame for free in the next certain amount of time, probably a year. I think it's good for.
Oh, that's an interesting thing. Well, I don't have a ticket for the game that day, so I watched it on television. But another interesting thing too, Rich, is that we're seeing players now go in that have played with a multitude of teams as well. Years ago, it used to be you play with one, maybe two teams in your career. The real big superstars, and now you're seeing guys that have played with quite a few teams. Just think of Tim Raines with the Montreal, where he had his glory years, and he's going in as an Expo. But he also played with the Yankees. He also played with who else? I can't even remember. But a couple of different teams, and the same with Ivan Rodriguez, Texas Rangers. He played the bulk, but he also played with the Miami Marlins, or excuse me, the Florida Marlins. They were still Florida Marlins when he played with them, and played with the Washington Nationals, and I'm sure I'm missing some teams, but and that's something new as well. By the way, he went in as a Texas Ranger, and Bagwell played the bulk of his career with Houston for the most part. He was drafted by Boston, I believe, and came up, and they traded him to Houston, and of course Houston very happy about making that deal, as he was a stalwart there with his buddy Craig Biggio, who was on the dais there. So that's kind of a nice thing, and it was nice to see last year's class there and the class from the year before there. Guys have to realize this is the history, and it's funny. The old guys now are starting to really get old and starting not to be able to make the journey, or passing away, unfortunately. And now it's up to these younger Hall of Famers to continue this tradition and keep going every year. And it's a great thing. They have a lot of fun. They have the golf tournament, and they're available in the town, and just a great thing. And it's a wonderful town. And like I said, if you can get up there, go. The people in the Hall of Fame are fantastic, and you can sign up for the one of the club memberships for the Hall of Fame, and once you get inside, and they'll give you you get 10% off in the shop, and you'll actually get back your membership fee. I mean, you'll actually get back if you paid in, for the Hall of Fame, and then go and sign up for the whatever the membership thing is, they'll actually refund your ticket price. So you'll get either way, you get a free ticket, but it's well worth it, and it's good for a year. You can go to as many times as you want. So if you're going to go up there and going to spend a couple of days, sign up. I think it's even a little cheaper if you sign up there instead of doing it online. So check that out. They got it's one of the best places you can go to.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. And when I hear you say that, you make me want to pack my bags up and take a drive up, 4 or 5 hour drive into the country, and settle in for a day or two. But yeah, it's just an awesome experience. And please call ahead about that ticket arrangement if you went on Sunday's game, the Hall of Fame game. They used to do that. I'm not 100% sure they still do.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they do about that.
But yeah, just a great trip there if you can make it. The MLB Hall of Fame. And you don't hear too much about Canton, Ohio spoke in those terms of NFL most of the time, Gary. But the Hall of Fame for baseball is definitely a shrine.
Yeah, I guess if we were more football fans, maybe it would be Canton as much. I don't know. It just seems to be something different about Cooperstown. And it could be because where it's placed, the whole the lore of it, the whole legends, the whole Doubleday thing, and everything like that. So it's really a concocted thing, but they did such a good job, and it's become such a fabric of the game that and it's independent of Major League Baseball. A lot of people don't realize that. It's got really nothing to do with Major League Baseball. It was completely, naturally they work hand in hand with them, but it's just a great play, and the town is so neat. I mean, it's really a cool town, even when it was dead in early April when we went. And by the way, if you don't like crowds, go in the off season.
Yeah, because they can get some crowds over there.
In the summertime, it gets very, very crowded. So if you go in the off season, you may enjoy it a little bit more, and you'll have more time to spend in the hall. You won't get jostled or anything like that. But just a wonderful place.
Yep, and it reminds me of a trip I made down to Baltimore last year. In early spring, I believe it was, before the baseball season started, to the Babe Ruth Museum. So I've often read about that, and I've been to Baltimore a half dozen times prior to this. Never got a chance to go see it. They just recently remodeled it. So we're going to try to get a guest on from down there and talk a little bit about that museum. It's a really nice place to visit, right in the shadows of Camden Yards there where the Baltimore Orioles play. But yeah, that's a definite nice trip too. Well, Gary, let's take a little break in the podcast here, and when we come back on the other side, we'll talk a little mail that we got just recently. We'd love to hear your comments. Please send your emails to talk@mlbthisweek.com. You can reach Gary at baseballtalkradio.com, or me, Rich at baseballtalkradio.com. We'd love to hear your comments, so send them in. Subscribe to the Baseball Talk Radio Show on Stitcher Radio, iTunes, or Podomatic.com. This way, you'll never miss an episode. Gary, I think I'm going to go over to baseballtalkradio.com and listen to all the baseball talk shows there. Do you think I can cram it all in on a weekend?
No, I don't think so. It's going to take you quite some time, but there's a little bit of everything there. Cover most of the teams and Japanese baseball, fantasy baseball, all there at baseballtalkradio.com, the home of great baseball talk shows. And go check it out. It's a great place. And if you'd like to help us out a little bit, you can go to patreon.com, become a sponsor of the show. Help us out. $2 a month, $1 a month, anything you can give it all would be gratefully appreciated and help us do more of this kind of thing, the video, and expand our capabilities and maybe some on-the-road surprises in the summertime. So that's patreon.com/baseball talk. Give whatever you can. We'd greatly appreciate it. And this is the time of the year, the spirit of giving is strong with everyone. So please go and help us out.
You're listening to BaseballPodcasts.net.
Wouldn't it be great if you could get a PhD in life through baseball? Welcome to Baseball PhD, a tour company for your brain. 30 major league teams, 100 places to see. Let's touch them all as we make the road trip of a lifetime.
Back live talking all about baseball here, Gary, and we had a email this afternoon sent in by a listener, Gary. His name happens to be big Cleveland Indians fan out there. He says, "Go Tribe." I wanted to comment about our last episode when we were talking about chemistry and how certain teams try to build that chemistry, and he sent us a link to a Wall Street Journal sports story by Jared Diamond. And that story basically starts off with teams desperately trying to figure out how to establish chemistry on a baseball team. The article starts off saying different studies are going on in the minors where they're putting GoPro cameras in the dugouts of some of these ball clubs trying to figure out what is chemistry. And can you believe that in this day and age?
Oh, God. Nick, what? Are they going to try to have a stat for chemistry now? I mean, it's crazy, Rich. You can't measure it. It's just there. It just happens. It's not something that can be measured or forced. It's just got to happen naturally.
Yeah, so they're all of a sudden cameras and everything like that to observe behaviors and things like that are all the rage nowadays. But yeah, as you said, just a chemistry is going to happen. That's what chemistry is. It's just something you can't put your finger on. You can't tell from people's expressions, what they're saying, what they're doing. It just sort of happens.
Yeah, it's just people mixing together, and you can't. You may think that you can narrow it down and get this, but you may get two people of the same temperament as these two other people that have great chemistry, and they're not going to match. So you cannot. This is really getting nutty now. I got to tell you.
You can't manufacture chemistry. Is that what we're...
Not at all. What are they going to do? Come up with some kind of serum that they can inject somebody with so everything, we'd be nice to you or something. I mean, I don't know. It's, oh boy.
But it's an interesting story nonetheless, and we thank Gary for sending it to us, sending it our way. And, it's just part of this new era that we live in 2017, if you want to call it that, Gary, with the cameras and things like that, and uh, sabermetricians, different stats that we would probably put on wallpaper somewhere and hang it in a dark closet somewhere. But
We'll use it for a certain purpose that I'm not going to say here. But yeah, it gets crazy though after a while. It's just, you can't quantify everything. I don't. You can try. I mean, but I guess it's part of the society we live in. Everything's got to have a label. And now everything in sports has got to be quantified and got to have a number attached to it. And I don't know. Again, I will say, if show me a team that's built entirely on analytics and sabermetrics that's won. And we discussed this last week with Theo Epstein. Even he said that chemistry is a large part of it now, when he didn't even realize it. And he's learning that and backing off of some of the analytics. So it has a place, but it's not the end all, the be all. And again, if for those who consider it the end all, the be all, show me a team that's won using that alone.
very good. So it's still a very human sport, baseball, even though the talk of creeping technology getting into it, maybe some pitch calls at some point in the next few years, you never know. But for now, it's still very much a sport that's a mystery as far as figuring out championship teams. Always the best part about a sport, I think, Gary, is you can't figure things like that out.
Yeah, it just sometimes it just happens.
Well, what's happening around the league is we're starting to get close to some serious races, Gary. Some of these teams are with big leads. We'll run through a little bit of the standings here in the National League. Nationals have a 14-game lead on the Miami Marlins. And how about those Marlins raising all the way up to second place?
Yeah, they're playing pretty decently, and that's been a wacky division between the Mets and the Marlins and the Braves. The Braves are up there for a while, and they're still not doing too bad. But the Mets are the big disappointment there, because I thought they would be closer to Washington, but the injuries and whatnot. But yeah, Miami and Atlanta, and I think Atlanta is going to be a good team in a couple of years, Rich. I think they're making moves. They're putting things together. They're going with a lot of young guys, and they could be a team on the rise. And in the Central, we spoke about that a little earlier, Rich, with the Cubbies grabbing a 2.5-game lead over Milwaukee. And St. Louis is hanging around, and so is Pittsburgh. Whether or not they can put together a big enough stretch to try to catch the Cubbies at this point, I don't know. But yeah, they're all still bunched up there, so anything could happen there.
Yeah, it looks like the Cubs have turned an interesting corner. They're now, it looks like 8 games above 500, and they were under 500 for a long time most of the season. So they've turned things around, but it's not to say that someone else can as well in that division. Like you said, the Cardinals are always tough towards playoff time. But out west, it's sort of a redo of the East, Gary. The Dodgers have a 14-game lead out there against the Diamondbacks, and the Diamondbacks are 15 games over 500.
Yeah, it's it's normally you'd say that's a close race there. If the Dodgers hadn't gotten out so far, it would have been a real tight one. But they opened up a big lead, 14, and it looks like I think it's going to be safe to say that it's going to be Washington and LA in the playoffs, unless they both have to, or one of them would have to have a major collapse before anything could happen. But LA just looks unbelievable at this point, and they may have actually gotten stronger over the past few days. with the trading deadline, which seems almost impossible. But they got to be a favorite to go to the series now.
Yep, and here's a late breaking news from the Washington Nationals as of the time we're doing this podcast. Max Scherzer was scratched from a start tonight with neck spasm, so that could be an impact on Washington. We'll have to investigate that in the days to come. But as you said, Gary, yeah, it would take a lot for these teams to stumble and fall from the heights they are right now. But we've seen it happen before.
And, that's an interesting point with Scherzer, because if he misses any significant amount of time, Strasburg is always a little shaky as well with the injuries. So, if they lose one or two guys like that, they could be in big trouble. Somebody could make a run at them, or at least they'll be in big trouble in the playoffs.
And right now, the wild card teams in the National League, as of the time we're doing this show, is the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Colorado Rockies. So 2 teams that really haven't been in it all that much in the last few years. They may have a chance to play a part in this playoffs for 2017. And, Gary, one of the interesting things about the playoffs is it's generally the team that's really playing hot at the time that the playoffs start, when it really matters. So, there's still a few good 2 months left in this season. There's still plenty of baseball to go.
Yeah, that's they say now if you can get into the playoffs, then anything could happen, and how true that is, Rich. And like you said, we'll see if somebody can get red hot at the end of the year, and you don't know whether that big lead for the Dodgers is going to help them or hurt them come playoff time, because they didn't have the competition most of the year, or this part of the rest of the way in. You never know. And so it'll be interesting to watch as we go into, now that we are in August and heading towards September and the postseason.
Very interesting indeed. Over in the American League, it's the Yankees. They found the winning ways again. They're 10 games over 500. Holding a nice lead there on the Boston Red Sox, but things are a little top heavy over in that AL East. You have a couple teams that are within 5 games of first place.
Yeah, Tampa Bay's only 4.5 out, and they just had a bad series against the Yankees, though. Baltimore, I'm surprised. Everybody's been counting them out, but they're really only 6.5 games out. So I don't get it yet. Toronto is 9 games out. And technically, you could say they're still in it, though they are not playing well. Both of those, Baltimore, Toronto, aren't playing well. So that could be why people are counting them out. But looking at the games behind, they're not in that bad of shape. And in the Central, we still got a dogfight going there. But boy, how this has changed up and down all year. Minnesota had the lead for a while, and then Cleveland grabbed it, and they of course went to the World Series last year. So they're the cream of the crop there. But now Kansas City, who was below 500 or 6 games above 500, and they're 2 games behind Cleveland. So Kansas City putting together a run of their own. Minnesota's 3 games under 500 now, 6.5 out. They're starting to fade, I think, Rich. But kudos to them for the year that they had. And, you can't complain. The first half was absolutely great. And Detroit has really fell on hard times, 10 games under 500. And, of course, the White Sox. But the White Sox are stripping away players and trading one players and getting prospects in. So didn't expect too much of them after they moved half of their team and playing with a lot of young guys now. So they're bringing up the rear there. And in the West, Rich, is the Houston Astros, and still keeping a 16-game lead over the Seattle Mariners.
The Houston Astros, and believe it or not, the new worst team in baseball. No, not my Phillies anymore. The San Francisco Giants took that title from them just the other night.
Wow, That's a dubious title, I guess.
They're about 500 percentage points away from from the Phillies. They're about a game worse than the Phillies right now. But yeah, that was a big step down for them. They had to have a free fall happen because Philadelphia's been playing terribly up through the last 12 games. They've won, I believe, 9 out of 12 of their last 12. So they've turned things around a little bit, trying to salvage the season. But I really didn't think anybody would catch them for the worst team this season.
Well, I guess you gotta want it, and I don't know. I don't know. It's a tough year in both those cities, but there's a lot of cities that are having a tough year. We're having a tough year here too in Mets land, and Cincinnati's having a rough year too. So there's always hope next year. Your Phillies made some trades, and maybe some youth in the organization will help things come along.
Yep, hope springs eternal for sure. Well, we thank everybody for listening to this edition of the Baseball Talk Radio Show. We looking forward to the big race here to the finish. Still a long way to go, though. The month of August can be long, a lot of dog days, a lot of hot, hazy, humid days. Ball takes some wicked bounces, and interesting things happen on the ball field. And of course, you have September as well, Gary.
Yeah, and again, it's just the only thing you can look at is that some of these guys have gotten out to such a big lead that it could happen. They could fall apart, but odds are we kind of know 3 of the teams that are going to be in the playoffs already. I think it would be safe to say.
Well, we'll keep watching, and we hope you keep listening to the podcast. Check us out over on iTunes. Subscribe there, or go over to Stitcher Radio. You can listen to us there, or our favorite place to be. Gary's other shows are there. My other show, Phillies Talk, when I can get one in, is there over at baseballtalkradio.com. And as we've been telling you, we'd love to have you as a sponsor on the show. We'd like to do some special things, things like that, but it does take a little funding. So we appreciate anybody that's listening, especially if you're a long-time listener. You can get in there and show your support a little bit.
Yes, certainly. Please do.
We'll talk to you again on the next edition of the Baseball Talk Radio Show, everyone.